So we're going to look at why does this matter when we look at text structure. And to do that, I want to start by looking at just a few fun brain facts. Number one, we are not getting smarter. Since the Victorian era, which was around the 1800s, IQs have gone down 1.6 points per decade for a total of 13.35 points. And actually, that's even further now because this was probably from about 5 or 10 years ago. So when we look at reading literature as you get older and you start getting into high school and college, you're going to be reading literature that was written in the 1800s. And you're going to find that it's a lot more difficult. Our vocabulary has changed a lot. Our methods of schooling are different. And there's obviously a lot of debate on whether what we're doing is working or not. And when we look at IQs and understanding of what we're reading, it doesn't seem like we always are. Brain cells cannibalize themselves as a last-ditch source of energy to ward off starvation. Cannibalizing means they eat themselves. So in very real ways, dieting can force your brain to eat itself. And we know that our brain is the most important piece of organ in our body. It helps us remember things. It gives us impulses and reactions. And so that's concerning. Your brain storage capacity is considered virtually unlimited. Capacity is how much something can hold. You might feel sometimes like after you've studied that there's just no possible way you could put any more information into your brain, but that's not true. It doesn't get used up like the RAM in your computer. You can always put more information into your brain. The adult working memory can only hold 7 objects or chunks of information at one time. This is why a lot of times your teachers teach you pieces of information in small pieces. So like maybe 10-minute lesson, and we go through a lot of mnemonics, memory tricks that are going to help you remember them. Because really, as an adult, and that's my age, at your age that's probably smaller, but we're working on strategies that are going to help you become proficient and strong readers as you get older. The adult memory can only hold 7 objects or pieces of information at one time. So when we think about this, I like to think, well, why does it matter? When we tie this to organizational structure, knowing the organizational structure of a text helps you understand the information that you're reading better and actually remember it. The goal of reading is always to understand and remember for longer periods of time. So when we look at finding the text structure, it helps you break information into smaller chunks to remember them. So if I'm reading a paragraph and I notice that it's in compare and contrast text structure, then I can break that information into smaller pieces of chunks and kind of file it away. I like this image here. It's kind of like thinking of your brain as a filing cabinet. You can file some information away so that it's easier to remember later when you really need it. It helps to determine if information is reliable. If you're stopping and thinking about, well, it's comparing and contrasting these two things, or it's showing how this cause and effect work together, you as the reader, often more so now than in the past, have to really determine if the information you're reading is reliable. And so you really have to make sure that you make sense of it. Okay, which is making sense of the information, using it in a way that's going to help you. If you know that you're going to need it for a test, then you've got to make sure that you remember it longer than the 10 or 15 minutes that it took you to do the assignment. You're going to need that information in 2 weeks when you take a test. So you've got to make sense of how does that information fit into what you're studying or what you're learning about. This becomes more important as you get into your job and you do training. And you have to remember that information for the entire time period that you're working at this job so you can apply it to whatever it is that you're working on. It helps you understand the author's purpose and why something is written. Is it trying to persuade you into believing something? Is it trying to teach you something? Is it trying to describe something so that you can understand it? So text structures are incredibly important there. And as we look at all this, reading is really about you developing your own opinions and making some understanding of what you're reading. So if you don't understand what you're reading, you're going to have a much harder time developing your own opinion. So when we look at why are we studying this, understanding how the brain works, how the brain remembers things, and why it's important to us as readers and ultimately as writers is critically important.